Pandora's box is about to open wide.
Welcome again to Pandora's box, everybody. We've got another great, fascinating, awesome guest on the show today. Brian Alsruhe, a man I've been a fan of for a long time now. I think I've been following Brian for, at least 8 years. It's been at least 8 years, maybe 9 years. And for people that don't know who Brian Alsruhe is, go check out his YouTube. Go check out his Instagram maybe while you're listening to this, and you'll get an idea of who the man is. But I became aware of him because of his YouTube channel. Brian Alsruhe is a strong man, absolute beast of a human being, and also an outdoors man. Just so many cool things about Brian Alsruhe. So yeah, go check out Brian Alsruhe. Is that Alsruhe? Alsruhe?
Yes.
Is that how you spell Alsruhe, Brian?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Cheers, man. I say I've been a fan for a long time. So yeah, go check out Brian Alsruhe on Instagram, YouTube. You can have a look at his work and his stuff, while we're chatting. But yeah, thanks so much for coming on today, Brian. Man, I said it's an absolute honor. I'm just flat out say it, man. I've been look up to you, man. I've been looking up for you for a long time. I think I first found your channel when I was probably 26, and I'm into pretty much all the same stuff you're into. But you're just a bit better at me than at all of it. so I think naturally, you find that sort of stuff inspiring, and you look to people that are into the same stuff as you, but people that you can look up to and can sort of learn from. And it's crazy for me because obviously, we've only just met, even if it is across the Atlantic. But as I said, I've been following you for such a long time. You've been such a big inspiration to me. So it's great. It's great to finally actually chat to you, man.
I am totally honored, and thank you so much, and thanks for having me on the show. I'm excited to be here.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much. What's going on with you at the moment, man?
Well, we mentioned it briefly beforehand, but it's Valentine's Day, so my wife and I are going to be having a whole day together and stuff like that. But just living life, trying to train, trying to just really keep up with getting older in the training, and just trying to stay positive, really.
Yeah, man. I mean, I've just turned 34, but I'm even feeling it myself. Like the difference between how I train now and what my body can put up with now compared to say when I was 27 is different. And some people might laugh at that, like they think, well, yeah. Like I think some people might think, 7 years, like how different can that be between being 27 and 34? But I know that if I train now, like I trained when I was 27, I would probably get injured like within a couple of weeks. Yeah,
things would start breaking, things would start popping. That actually happened to me. My bicep, if you look at my bicep, see how there's like a gap here? Because I just recently tore my bicep and tore my rotator cuff, and it's literally because still doing things the way that I like at 34. I didn't even start strongman until I was 34, so I was just lifting like a normal gym guy prior to that. So at 34,
like bodybuilding sort of stuff.
I'm sorry, what?
Was that just sort of like bodybuilding stuff, more like just regular sort of gym goers?
I never did bodybuilding. I was always into like MMA and stuff, so I was always about performance, but always the squat, the bench, the deadlift, overhead press. I grew up reading like T-Nation articles and stuff like that. So like, if you didn't squat and you didn't deadlift, you were doing it wrong. And so I bought into that as like huge motivation, and really it shaped a lot of my lifting.
Yeah, man, for sure. Yeah, it's crazy that you didn't get into strongman until you were 34. So that's like the same age I am now. And I said for anybody else out there that's either has been following you for a while or hasn't, go and check out Brian's stuff from. I mean, you're training now, but I mean, you're training. I remember when I first sort of found your channel, because I'm very similar to you. My approach to training, it's like performance first, like physique second. Like to me, like the physique is like a nice like side effect of training. But I grew up like in a very sports heavy family. My dad was like a massive rugby player and stuff like that, and I had like a lot of military in my family, and I grew up watching, if I wasn't watching like rugby with my dad and my uncles, I'd be watching like pro wrestling and stuff. And I always gravitated more towards like, You know, like the wrestlers like Bill Goldberg and Brock Lesnar, who were like the freak athletes, you know, who were like could run super fast, but then they could also pick up the 400-pound guys and like throw them around and that. And I used to watch that as a kid, and I think that was freaking awesome. So, you know, I thought that's way cooler than like posing in a pair of like, you know, in like a thong. Like, no disrespect, like, you know,
it's just not my thing either.
So
like,
I'd want to do like, yeah. No, sorry, go on, man.
No, go ahead. You go.
Oh no. So I was just going to say, yeah. So when I sort of, you know, I sort of became qualified as a PT in 2010, and when I sort of started sort of making my own programs and stuff like that, mine would always be, and this is why I was such an immediate fan of yours. Very similar to sort of your style of training, but you would just take it to a whole nother level. So I would do crazy stuff when I was in like my 20s still. So, you know, I'd do like, you know, I'd deadlift like 200 kg for like 6 to 8 reps, and then I'd go straight away into 100 kg overhead press, and then straight away into kettlebell swings, and then straight away into a dumbbell row, you know. And like, it's quite a crazy way to train in hindsight. Like, I can't really train like quite like that, or it's certainly not as heavy as I used to now. It just, and like immediately into the exercises, you know, I'm like talking like not really any break. But then I discovered your stuff, like your channel, and you're like that, but like on another level, man. Just like stronger, faster, fitter, and it was crazy to see, man. Like absolutely crazy to see.
Well, to be honest, that's how I've always trained, right? Because I don't know how far into my story you want to go back, but like when I started training, I was real into MMA and like stuff like that, and circuit training meant more than being able to have like a 1 rep max deadlift. But I also grew up watching Ninja Turtles and stuff like that, and guys with muscles, and was like, I want the muscles as well, right? Yeah. And so, and I didn't even know about the sport of strongman, which is, if people don't know much about strongman, like you're asked to do things like that, like as many deadlifts as you possibly can at like 90% of your 1 rep maximum in a minute. You know what I mean? And so you need like different aspects of your body. But when I did start doing that training, I had a friend in high school named Mike Jenkins, who was an American strongman, who ended up dying at a pretty young age.
I remember him.
And, yeah, you remember Mike. And he was an awesome, positive guy. He's terrific. And we were friends in high school. We both went away to college and did our own college things. And then after college, we came back together and started personal training at the same gym. And he was doing the strongman stuff. And all that I knew about strongman was that like everyone's 7 foot tall, 400 pounds, and they only compete on Christmas, apparently, right? Like that's all I knew. And I was like, I'm into this MMA stuff. I don't want to be like a big fat guy. That's not my game. But he was like explaining how there's different weight classes and stuff like that. And I always promised him that I would do a strongman show with him, because he saw how I train. He was like, "You're gonna be perfect for this if you try it." And I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, man. I'll do that someday with you." And he just was climbing up the ranks, because he was like 6'6". He was like 315 with abs in high school. Like he was a genetic monster, you know? And I always told him that I would. And then fast forward a couple years, Mike went on to go open a gym in Pennsylvania, a CrossFit gym in Pennsylvania, competing in strongman on like a world level. And then I kind of went away and did a counterterrorism thing for about a decade. And one day I got a call from a mutual friend that Mike had died. And it was pretty earth-shattering, because he was always in shape. He took care of his body. He was doing all kinds of things. And he had I forget what it's called, but it's an enlarged heart. And one day he went to sleep he basically had a heart attack and died, or like some type of heart event, and died. And so that was right before Thanksgiving. And actually that Thanksgiving, this mutual friend was going to have a Christmas party and had invited us both, because he wanted me to do strongman as well. And instead of going to the Christmas party, we ended up going to Mike's funeral. And man, it's a lot easier to talk about now. Like before, it used to, you know, kind of mess me up some. But when we were at the funeral, I was like crying in like the church pew, and like just thinking about all the times that I told this guy that I would do this with him. And it was like, I knew it meant a lot to him. And literally in the room were like strongmen from all around the world, like literally the best strongman in the world everywhere. And it's a weird room where I'm literally like the smallest man in the place. You know what I mean? And there's just all these monsters everywhere, and everyone has this like intensity. And again, I'm doing the MMA stuff still at this point, but I just found out that I had a brain tumor, and found out that getting hit in the head wasn't such a good idea anymore, right? It's like a credit card, like you might not pay now, but you're gonna pay. And so I was seeing this intensity in these other guys, and I was like, I always told Mike that I would do this. I'm gonna do it, right? So there in that church pew at his funeral, I was like, made that promise to like my friend who like I'd never, like, it was hard because I knew he'd never see it, but it was still important that like I actually kept that word, right? And literally like
it's like honoring him, isn't it?
Yeah. But like a month later, I did my first strongman show, and I had never touched an implement before, like the log and the stones and all the classic strongman stuff that you see. But the week before, Mike's wife, who was still running the gym, invited me up to the gym to touch some of these things. And literally, like, I grabbed an Atlas stone for the first time and had a log and stuff. And the next weekend, I went and competed, and I won because I was a strong guy from doing all my other training. And like I said, my training was kind of built for that anyway. And it was just, it went well. I thought I was going to be like a world champion the same way that Mike was. And then I realized that this pool is deep. And there are, like, if people don't know strongman and they think it's just all the Brian Shaws and the Thors and the guys who are 400 pounds and whatever, that is part of strongman. But there are weight classes, and like some of the most competitive weight classes are at like 220 pounds, 200 pounds, because you have such a mix of athleticism along with the strength. Same, just like MMA, like the heavyweights are fun to watch because there could be a knockout at any moment, but you don't see as much athleticism as you do with these smaller weight classes and things like that.
Sure.
It's the same exact thing. And man, so I think not even 2 months later, I opened up a gym. I quit my counterterrorism job and was like, that part of my life is over, and I'm going to start a gym. And I started a gym that just brought world champions, brought all kinds of people in my doors. Even like something that I always like to mention are the adaptive athletes. Like if you go to my YouTube and the homepage will show you some of these adaptive athletes that just changed my entire paradigm of thinking of what is possible and what is not possible, because I do like crazy things for like a physical endeavor, right? Like I do things that a lot of people don't feel like they could do.
Man, for sure.
But then there were many people. This guy named Zabi Osa, now he's a adaptive CrossFit. I forget what he is in the world, but he's up there in the world now. But at the time, he was a dude that literally showed up at my gym one day. There's a knock at my door because a bunch of people were coming to my gym from YouTube because they were like they wanted to come work out at the gym and stuff. And there's a knock at the door. I turn to shake this dude's hand. I'm like doing something. I turn to shake dude's hand. I go to shake it, and I realize that I don't have a hold of like a fully formed hand. It's almost like knuckles. And then on the other side, literally at his elbow, he doesn't have anything past the elbow, right? And if you check this guy out, it's Zabi Osa. He's so inspiring. And so I shake this dude's hand, and I'm like, okay, I've never dealt with any adaptive athletes in my life, and adaptive just means that they have to do different things than a normal able-bodied individual.
Sure.
But, man, like, I told him, sign all this paperwork for the waiver or whatever, go get warmed up, I'll be with you guys in just a couple minutes, and I turn around, and my brain is just running, going, what am I going to do with a guy who has, like, half a hand and half an arm? Like, how am I going to do strongman with this guy, right? And one of the guys I'm working with, Nicholas Myers, or Nikolai Myers, I'm sorry. Nikolai,
he's done a lot of good stuff, hasn't he?
He has, man. He's been a world champion. He's always at the top of the game. Just an amazing athlete, an amazing friend, and I love him to death. And he's coaching. We're both coaching.
Because he used to be in your training videos a lot, didn't he?
Yeah. Uncle Nick, he's my man. Like, he was my right-hand man for 7 years. You know what I mean? And so I'm turning around freaking out, and Nick just looks at me. He's like, hey, man, check it out. And I turn around, and Zabi is doing muscle-ups on a pull-up bar that's like 10 feet in the air like it was the most amazing thing I've ever seen. And that day we saw that dude bench press, like his body weight, like balancing a barbell on his elbow, and like doing stuff. And man, a bunch of people who like had lost their legs or had everyone, even like Smiles Taylor. I'm sure you know about Miles. He's CP artist.
He went quite viral, didn't he?
He did. We got to go to the Arnold. Myself, Nick, and Miles all got to go to the Arnold together and like meet Arnold and have breakfast with him and stuff because Miles is so inspiring.
That's crazy. Every lifter's dream, man.
CP. But to see these people do these things, like literally every single time that you think the impossible just became possible so regularly that like everyone who worked out there went from like a soccer mom to like Maryland's strongest woman, from like a normal guy that like whatever to a world champion. Like it was absolutely incredible because there was such an environment and I was just in the middle of this whirlwind with everybody. And man, it was just one of the coolest experiences that you could ever have as a lifter, was to be there at the prime, to see someone with no legs hit a deadlift PR, and you're like, mine's just blown, you know what I mean? Yeah. And so I've gotten to see,
I think you're to credit for a lot of that though, man.
Yeah, just I can't tell you how inspirational it's been and just how much that has changed my whole perspective on everything in the world and what is actually possible and what is not possible.
Oh yeah, for sure, man. I think what you're capable of, what people are capable of, is far more than they probably realise. You know, if they're in the right environment with the right support and they've got the right mindset for it. But yeah, that Miles kid, yeah, as you said, you know, he has CP, cerebral palsy. So I can only imagine what it's like to have something like that. But yeah, to see him with just a big smile on his face all the time in your videos and stuff, just like, you know, lifting, and, you know, to get recognition from, you know, the big man Arnold Schwarzenegger himself and all this stuff, and oh man, yeah, it's just a beautiful story. But as I said, I think you are to credit for a lot of these people's successes, whether it was soccer moms or Miles, because you're a super inspirational guy as well, Brian. You know, you've been through a lot of adversity. As I said, I've been following you for a while now, and in a minute, I'd sort of like to sort of rewind things and almost get back to almost like asking a bit more about your childhood and sort of naturally let you know, sort of like flow on through your childhood up through your adolescence and stuff like that, just for my own personal interest and also for the interest of listeners, whether it's their first time ever hearing about you or their long time fans. I think that'd be sort of really interesting to do. But I know you've had a lot of trials and tribulations, man, you know, with your own health over the last sort of decade, to say the least. But I think, you know, you've always had like a never quit, never say die attitude, and I can tell just watching your videos from across the pond, man, let alone being there in the atmosphere, when it was like you and Miles and Uncle Nick and Olu and all these other people, it just seemed like such a positive, highly charged, energetic environment, man. I mean, say if I was a few hundred miles closer to you, I would come myself, you know.
And you know, that building didn't even have bathrooms. We didn't even have bathrooms in the building. If you had to go to the bathroom, you had to go outside. It just attracted some of the best lifters in the world. Literally came and worked out in the pole barn because the atmosphere it was absolutely incredible. It was so cool.
Man, it looked like a fantastic gym. I think that added to it though. I remember seeing, you know, because sometimes you do stuff outside, wouldn't you, whether it be like sprints or farmers walks and stuff like that, and it did seem really rural. But I think that like adds to it, you know.
Yep.
To me,
it was. It literally was on a farm.
Yeah,
no, go ahead.
Yeah. No, sorry, Brian. Go on. No, go on, man. As I said, there's a little bit of a lag for people that are listening. There's a little bit of a time lag. You know, let's face it. We're in you know, across the Atlantic chatting to each other, so there's a bit of a lag. So if you ever think that I'm trying to talk over Brian or he's trying to talk over me, that's not the case. It's just sometimes we haven't quite caught up with each other. But no, please finish what you were saying, man.
Oh, I don't know where you want me to go next. What would be helpful for you in me telling this story? Because man, I would rabbit trail all over.
Oh man, no, mate, me too. So it's a good thing that we have some sort of structure to this. But one thing I thought would be really interesting is sort of, and it helps keep things linear. If we could sort of go right back to sort of like your childhood, and like you could tell us, like, you know, like where you were born, what was life growing up for you. I know that you live in. Do you still live in Maryland?
I do.
Yeah, and were you born there?
I was. So I was born in Baltimore. If anyone knows anything about Baltimore, it is not a terrific place everywhere, right? Like there's a lot of crime. It's a very violent place. And that's where I originally grew up, like until I was like 8, and there was a lot of problems in my neighborhood. Like I grew up kind of in a rough area where I got in fights. I got picked on a lot, and actually something that has affected me my entire life that I'm dealing with now, which I didn't know about because I'm sure we'll get to it. But I'm actually in graduate school now for like mental health and counseling and therapy. Wow. To not only deal with my own stuff, but to help others that wouldn't normally go to. I don't have like a sweater vest on. I don't look like a normal counselor. I don't sound like a normal counselor. So there's a lot of people who might be willing to speak to me that wouldn't necessarily go to a normal situation. So that's what I'm trying to fill that need. But the reason why I mention that is because when I was young, like 5, 6 years old, we had a neighbor who was abusive to his wife and stuff, and tried breaking into our house. Like there was a violent home invasion when myself and my sisters were home alone, and we had to like run away. So like there were things like this in my past that immediately drew me to never being a victim, right? Like not only because of the circumstance, but I also wanted to put on muscles because like I was too little to fight some grown man trying to come in and hurt us. I was too, you know what I mean? Like, so my whole life has been about training martial arts, like I said, or trying to be strong or trying to be tough or putting on this armor and stuff. And I've had very, very blue-collar, hardworking parents who have encouraged me to always keep driving forward and always work harder than everyone else and try to like just outdo things. So it really set up a perfect framework for exactly to become the guy that like by the time that you saw it, I was in my 30s, just had been practicing this my whole life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolute machine, man. Absolute machine.
And it really, I do have to say that the way that I grew up doing construction with my dad and manual labor all the time and had a lot of energy as a kid, still have a lot. I'm 44 and still have a lot of energy. And my dad was the classic dad who's like, hey, dig a hole and then fill it in with like, just dig another hole and then fill it in. And like, it was always just keeping me busy with like splitting wood, doing manual labor, doing something construction-wise. Yeah. Trying to use up that energy and stuff. And he's always been an inspiration. My mom has been a hard worker her whole life. She's an inspiration to me too. So it's actually been very, very interesting. And that led me up, like I said, through all lifting and stuff like that. And then after I went to college, but for criminal justice and sociology, it didn't have anything to do with lifting weights and stuff. And but that was always a big passion of mine. So when I got out of college, I knew that I wanted to do something with it and got involved with gyms and stuff like that. And then, like I said, because of my background, because of my work ethic, a couple situations, I got involved in counterterrorism with the government and kind of was all over the place for about 10 years of my life, just traveling a lot and doing different things. It's not as cool as it sounds, and I don't talk a ton about it. But
it's tiring.
The reason why I mentioned that, the reason why I mentioned that is because some point in those travels, I was someplace and contracted a parasite called schistomiasis, which is the second most deadly parasite to malaria. Schistomiasis kills like 240,000 people in Africa alone every single year, but it's not seen a lot in America.
Crazy.
So I'm running Never State, which is my gym, for those who don't know, and we're having all this success, and we have world champions, and all these great things are going on. And one day, I go in and I start feeling sick, and I'm like, I'm gonna throw up. And I'm not a person who threw up very regularly at the time. And sure enough, I got sick, and that started it. And it started out happening like once a day, 3 times a day, 5 times a day, and it just kept increasing. And then I started just dropping body weight. Obviously, I wasn't able to hold on to mass. If I put food in, it came right back out. Yeah. Like, it was terrible. And it got to the point where I was throwing up, and I say throwing up, but dry heaving. I'm sorry for being graphic, but 30 to 50 times a day, I would have episodes, right, where something was happening and had lost 70 pounds of body weight. And
that's crazy, man.
It was bad. Crazy. I tore my other rotator cuff, was having injuries because I couldn't hold on to nutrients, but still wanted to train. It's all documented on YouTube. You can just see the decline. And even my voice.
Mate, I know. It's interesting It's interesting to hear you talk about it. Sorry, Brian, to cut you off. No. Just because obviously I was following you like through this. So when I started following you, I don't know if you would consider it the peak of your sort of like physicality, if you want to call it. But I mean, it seemed like it to me. I mean, you were just deadlifting, squatting, benching, overhead pressing, like insane freaking numbers, and you were like freaking jacked, but like doing burpees and freaking like sprints and everything in between your sets. And I was like, man, this guy is like, he's like freaking Terminator or something. Right. But then, obviously your story then started slowly unfolding with all of this like sickness. And I remember it was like, because obviously you know what it is now, but there was a long time when you didn't know what it was, did you? And you were like, and I remember in one of your videos, before I let you continue, I remember you saying like, it was crazy because you were going to all of these doctors and they were saying like, we don't understand. You are like the fittest guy we've ever seen in our lives, but at the same time, like you are dying and we do not know why. And that is crazy. I bet that was so crazy to go through.
When I went in for this shoulder, because of that, I was at the national championships and tore my rotator cuff and was at surgery for it. And literally I'm in there, my pre-surgery stuff, explaining this vomiting issue and why like they need to be careful, because if I'm asleep, I'm going to be throwing up. Like that's how I wake up every day is vomiting in my mouth, right? Like so just warning these people, and they're like, you literally are the healthiest dying person we know. Like your shoulder doesn't matter. We need to get this figured out. And I had dropped a lot of body weight and was trying to get better and stuff. And went to the Arnold Sports Festival with Miles, actually. That was when myself, Miles, and Nick were all there. And I ran into a guy named Mark Bell. A lot of people watching probably know who Mark Bell is. And he's a friend of mine who we've done some collaborations and stuff. And I run into him and he's like, hey, man, I thought you were like dead. Like,
very famous powerlifter, isn't he?
Very famous and great coach and great guy. And so he literally runs into me. He's like, hey, man, I thought you were dead. Like, what's going on with you? And I explained what's going on. Yeah. And he's like, I have a friend who's a doctor who only sees like people who do dangerous stuff overseas. And she will, as a friend, she will take a look at you and see what's going on. And so I had been sick for probably 3 or 4 years where I'm just vomiting constantly. I won't leave the house sometimes because I'm too ashamed. Like I'll be in the middle of the grocery store and just, you know what I mean? Like I'd be in the middle of a conversation or I'd be driving and just,
man,
it was terrible, right? And not to mention the fact that like mentally.
And let's face it as well, if you're a proud man, you know.
It was like having the flu for years, you know?
Yeah.
And so.
Sounds worse, man, to be honest. Like.
It was terrible. It was terrible. And like, I got to a dark place, you know what I mean? Like, when you don't see any signs of getting better and literally doctors are like, you're going to die, like, and this is going to be the rest of your life, it's just constant vomiting. You're like, you know.
Man, anyway. That's insanely heavy, isn't it? I don't know if any human being could have handled it better than you did, to be honest, man. I think a lot of people just wouldn't have even come out of that, the other end. You know, it's like crazy. The amount of toll that must have had on your psyche.
Yeah,
especially as someone that just before that was used to being like superhuman, you know?
Yes.
So one extreme to the other, like what an insane turnaround.
And it was like everything that I built, right? Like even like my body, like I'd been working at making my body as great of a weapon as I possibly could since I was a child, right? Because of that incident, and then literally just watching it waste away, and then as that goes, like. The gym, I'm like, I've got this awesome thing going, and now I'm going to lose everything. Like, it was really hard. It was hard on me. It was hard on my wife. It was hard on my family. Anyway, we ended up having to drive to New York City, which is it's a decent drive from where I live into the middle of the most like congested place possible, and met someone named Dr. Lyon, who now is like social media famous. If you don't know who she is, her name is Gabriel Lyon, and she is just an outstanding doctor. And she
pretty epic name.
Yes, yeah, and absolutely incredible, right? So I sit down across from her, and her husband's a Navy SEAL. Like she deals a lot with the Navy SEAL Foundation and stuff like that. And she tells me to stick out my tongue, and so I stick out my tongue, and she goes, "You have worms." And I was like, so that's my problem. I have worms, right? But it's literally a simple fix because she recognized it immediately from like seeing other people who've had this before. But in Africa, like, you go into like a med shed and somebody's like, hey, you have this problem, take these pills, you're going to be better, right? But because I had it for so long, they had done their damage and everything in my body. So I still deal with the vomiting. I only do it usually maybe once a day,
to this day.
times a day. But it's exponentially better than it was. But from that moment forward, I started kind of making progress back. You know what I mean? But I've never been able to... been fighting age as well as I've gone, but I've never been able to get back to where I was.
Man, I'm just as somebody that's like looked up to you and been following you for a while, and just like such a decent guy, I'm so glad, man, that you actually, you know, came out the other end of that. And isn't it crazy that like all of those years where you were going, and I remember in one of your videos you were saying, you know, they were testing you for like every cancer under the sun and all this like different stuff, and you didn't know, and you must have felt so hopeless, just being like, man, why the hell am I dying?
Yeah.
But then suddenly for Mark Bell, just to put you in contact with that person that then immediately just went, I know what's wrong with you. Here, take these pills. Like, that must have been, like, what was that like for you? That must have been insane. Like, do you remember sitting there and just being like, oh my God, I finally figured it out?
It was almost unbelievable. Like, because you were like, there's no way it's this simple. Like, we've been to 30 doctors who've given us 30 different ideas, none of which panned out. So we actually had to get some pretty heavy testing that had to do with probing and things like that because of testing for the worms. And the whole there's a video on my channel.
That's a word you never want to hear.
No, and we're talking like when this is happening, right? I'm obviously not looking at the doctor because that would have been really weird. And the doctor, he's telling me, he's like, he's doing this and it's very uncomfortable. I'm not in a good place. And the doctor's like, you'd never believe this was 10 inches long, would you? And I was like, what? Like, I could not believe that was going on. And I had to get it done twice just to make sure I didn't like it. But they did have to do it twice to make sure that I didn't have the worms. So, and it was so funny, like, because the first time, like,
that's crazy.
Like, I went to the doctor and she's like, hey, you have these worms. We need to test to make sure what kind of worms you have, because there were a couple different parasites I had. And she, as soon as that 10-inch comment came out, I literally thought about Mark Bell and was like, he set me up. There's no way this is not a setup. Like, this is just a big elaborate joke. And anyway, man, it was otherworldly to be able to take some pills and immediately like just the vomiting started decreasing, because anyone who's been sick with like food poisoning where like you vomit multiple times a day and you're never comfortable, and like, man, every single day I would go to sleep, right? Because I don't sleep much anyway because of the incident as a child, but like I would go to sleep and then get woken up literally by having vomit in my mouth. That's how I'd like be choking and have to deal with it. No. And I mean, to go from that to where I am now is just, it's night and day. You know what I mean? It's absolutely night and day.
When you were at your worst, when it was at its darkest, did you just think like, this is it for me? Did you have one of those moments?
I had those moments all the time. Like, because you're not only terrified that like, you have to have something terrible if this is happening to your body, right? Like, there's no way that like something good is going on. And I mean, mentally, it just got exhausting. Like, I didn't want to play anymore. You know what I mean? I was like, if these are the cards that I got dealt, I don't want to play anymore, you know? And so there were definitely times. And that, man, I've been through many things in my life, like I've said. And I will say that this is the darkest that it ever got for me, just because it felt so hopeless. And there was just it felt like no one had any idea what was happening. I was getting worse by the day. It just, it got dark. And that's one of the reasons why I'm doing the mental health stuff now in grad school, is because there's other people going through chronic illness. Like, I've been through chronic illness. I've been through like violent home invasion as a child, like trauma, like these things, like my past and counterterrorism, all those things are things where I believe that I can relate to individuals that are definitely in need of mental help. And if I can be there for somebody, in that dark time and be like, I don't know what is going on with you because I'm not in your shoes, right? Like, it's really tough to ever be like, yeah, I understand, because you don't, right? Like, you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
But I can be like, look, I've been through some dark times and I've been through some stuff. And if I'm able to even just provide that, if I would have, because I mean, I didn't even think that incident as a kid was a big deal. I was like, oh, that stuff just happens to people. It's not a big deal. And I have so many incidences throughout my life that are like that I was like, until I went and got some help for myself, like some therapy for myself, because of being so sick and things like that, I didn't even realize any of that was a big deal. And it played a role. And it's one of the reasons why I have all the muscles and have always been training like that my whole life. Like, there's just direct
It's set
line.
up the framework for your whole entire life. Like, clearly, it's clear to me that it's set up the framework for your whole entire life. And I mean, it's one of those things, isn't it? I mean, like a lot of things in life, it's like a two-sided coin. There's so many. I mean, for you, I bet it's a lot of inner turmoil, a lot of struggle. But one of the beautiful things that's come out of that is you are clearly have this thing inside of you that just wants to help people, whether it's in the gym or, you know, with this therapy stuff. You have this like need inside of you to like help people get better, whether it's like people that are struggling mentally or get better physically, so that you can live a better, you know, life and live longer, you know, and that's a beautiful thing, man.
Thanks. And you know, my wife is a therapist. She's been a counselor for like 15 years. So I've watched her and how much she's been able to help people with problems. But I've also seen that there's a whole population that isn't getting help that I think I could reach. And the cool part is that it's really, really tough to be physically, like super physically capable and strong and healthy, and also be mentally like hurting. And it's all like it's spokes in a wheel, right? Like mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, like all those things kind of need to line up. And if anything's out of balance, then things aren't running right. You know what I mean? And I think just having the background and all the physical stuff, I mean, so much of going to the gym, like, you know what to do at the gym. You know what to lift. You know what to eat. You know what to do. Why don't you do it all the time, right? There's reasons. So it's finding out the mental reasons why people won't do certain things, or why people do certain things, or why I mean, I've known a lot of very, very high-level performers, and almost all of them are battling something, right? Or they had a parent who was like overbearing, or they had something going on. Like, there's a whole mental side to this game that is so powerful that you're like, man, if that isn't explored, that's kind of the next level where I'm at. Like, I feel like if I can't physically set the example, then I need to start thinking about the other ways that I can help enhance people's training, enhance people's lives. And the mental game is so massive, because if I didn't have that mental game throughout my entire life of doing hard things, when the real hard things came, I don't believe that I would have been able to handle them, like the sickness and stuff like that. If I hadn't been training brutally hard all the time and setting these landmarks of being like, yeah, it was hard, but I didn't think I was going to get through that, and I did, by going one step at a time, 1 second at a time, one rep at a time, whatever you got to do, right? And if I made it to that, then I can make it through this 1 second at a time, 1 day at a time, 1 moment at a time, 1 thought at a time, right? And a lot of people don't believe that, like, you're building mental muscles in the gym. But I think, for me, emotionally, there's no way that I'd be able to handle the things that I've handled in life if it weren't for extreme, hard physical training, you know?
Man, I completely agree with you, and I think that's one thing that's not sort of told to like the general population that don't work out enough. I think some people might even see it as like a vainglorious thing to do, or just something so you can like show off and stuff like that. But I think, man, like, and don't get me wrong, there's an element of that, of course. I mean, in all areas of life, you're going to have sort of like more like the douchey people that are trying to show off and whatever. But that's in every element of life, isn't it? In every sector of life. But I think, like, going to the gym, like training hard, it builds up, as you said, that mental toughness. And if you hadn't been through all those, if you didn't have that initial catalyst of that home invasion when you were younger, and then that almost gave you a chip on your shoulder, whatever way you want to call it, that had this like need then to almost become a machine and like protect people and protect yourself. And then, and then the mental toughness that was developing through these like brutal training sessions. And it's interesting actually, because one of the questions I was going to ask you today is like, when I watch you train, the way I would describe it is like that saying like, you look like a man possessed. And I was going to ask you what it is like psychologically, why do you think that you are like that? And you've already sort of answered that question without me even having to answer it. But, you had almost like that chip on your shoulder, whatever you want to call it, that made you get in the gym and train hard, but then just developing that mental toughness in the training itself, just year after year after year after year, which then eventually, helped you get through all these dark times. And now I think with your story, because you've clearly been through so many hardships, and when I say hardships as well, like everyone's been through hardships, but not everyone has been through what you've been through. I think that yours is a tale of trials and tribulations, man. But you are also as nice as anybody we have had on this show in talking to you, whether it's now or even just your sort of that tone and vibe I was getting from you, even from your emails. It might sound like a silly thing or a little thing, but just this, sometimes you can just get a vibe just from how someone signs off their email or something, and just really positive, decent guy. And I think that regardless of what you've been through in life, whether it's like kids that have come through from like broken homes, abusive, whatever you've been through, cancer patients, whatever, if someone heard your story, I think that they would think this is a guy that I can talk to, and I can really, because he will understand. That's what it seems like to me.
Well, I really, that means a lot that you say that. And I'm not, like, there have been dark times in my life where I haven't been as nice, and I've struggled mentally, like with my own mental health, and have had episodes and stuff where I have not been kind to people, or I snapped at people, or I was short with people, or there's just a lot of incidents where I wish I could have another play at it and do it differently. So I really appreciate you saying that. But I think the important thing to know is that, like, you don't have to be the same person that you've always been, right? Like, if you haven't been into working out, or you haven't been into working on your mental health, and you're a jerk to people all the time, and you don't know why you're being a jerk to people all the time, like, the thing is that you can always choose to who you want to be today, and you can choose to, you're going to have some sort of suffering, you're going to have some sort of pain, there's hard things going to happen, but it's really how you handle those things. And I have a saying on a shirt that I put out called "Suffer Beautifully," because it's really about not the suffering that you're going through. It's because everyone is going through something, and I don't care who you are. Like, if you are like a 10-year-old child, you think like not getting your dessert is suffering or whatever, right? Like, there's different levels of suffering, but to that person, it feels real, right?
It's
it feels
all relative.
Very real, and there's emotions, and there's everything behind it. And however you're going, whatever you're going to go through, you just have a choice of how you're going to ride it. You know what I mean? And you get to make that choice every single day. Just because maybe you were supposed to do a set of 10 yesterday and you quit at 8 doesn't mean that you need to quit today. You can make it, right? Or if you ate bad all day yesterday because you were mad at yourself, or you were eating ice cream or whatever, you don't need to be that same person today, right? Like, you have the opportunity to choose
100%.
who you want to be every single day. And my gym stands for constant and never-ending improvement, right? Like, never satiated, never satisfied. And I don't mean that in like a jerk, like, oh no, I need to be stronger, I need to be this, I need to be that. It's like, no, it's about constant and never-ending improvement, and like chiseling your own statue, So like right now, like, I know most likely with these injuries and stuff, I'm probably not going to bench 500 pounds again. It's probably not going to happen, right? So how else can I get better at this? I need to figure out the mental side of the game, or I need to figure out the emotional side of the game, or I need to work on myself emotionally, or whatever. But just constantly trying to be better at living life, right? Because it's way too short, man. Like I said, like, you're 10 years before me, and when I was your age, like, that's when I started strongman, and it feels like it was a second ago. And now I can't do the things that I used to be able to do. And I'm like, that's not really fair, right? 16 years old was like 10 minutes ago, right? And it just goes so fast. And really, man, everyone needs to understand that, like, these are the good old days. Like, right now, You are never going to be younger than you are right now. You're never going to be better looking than you are now. You're never going to be, right? Like, that's not true for everyone, but like things are so good. You're going to look back and like being able to have a decade of being on YouTube. I'm not like Tom Cruise who doesn't age, right? Like, I've seen myself get older and go through this chronic illness and stuff.
To be fair, he probably has a lot of work done, man.
He doesn't. And it doesn't make sense. But like seeing yourself go through these, like, you gotta realize that like every single moment that you're going through is awesome, and you really need to live it 100% for where you're at, because living in the past is stupid, and living in the present or living in the future doesn't really make sense right now. You know what I mean? So like when we opened the podcast, and I was like, man, I'm just trying to stay positive, live my life, deal with like what I'm dealing with, like through everything. That's the truth, right? Like, I'm trying to be there. I'm trying to live it. And some days are good and some days are bad, but they're days. And you know what? When I'm 70 years old, I'm going to look back and be like, I wish I was there again. Like, that was so good, you know? Yeah. So that...
Oh, for sure, man. For sure. Like,
go ahead.
Hindsight's always 20/20, isn't it? And I think it's like interesting because my clogs were sort of turning then when you know, while you were sort of talking then over the course of the last 5 minutes, and I was thinking several things, and I think one of the reasons, whether I realised it or not, that you always resonated with me so much and you inspired me is because, like, similar to you, you know, like it's almost like it's very important for me to constantly feel like I'm improving myself. And sometimes but at the same time, I've definitely had like some dark moments of my life and like done some things I'm not proud of. And I think one thing that I always think, and it's similar to your mentality, is I always think like, right, never take for granted that you're a good person. Like, try and wake up every day and prove that you're a good person. And I think, and some days you're going to fail. Don't try and beat up yourself too much about that, because we're all humans. But you know, you've got to wake up every day and almost try and prove to the world that you're a good person. You're never like resting on your laurels. It's not like I am this or I am that. No, like every day, like prove to the world what you are. And I think that you're, that never sate. Never sate. You're never satiated. You know, that suffer beautifully. All of those things, they resonated with me so much, man. I think that's one of the reasons why I've always been such a big fan of you, and why you just like, you know, your channel and yourself has always resonated with me. But I think a couple of other little notes I want to say sort of before we carry on, and which I think is really important to try and almost like get across to people that are listening that maybe aren't wired quite the same as you, or even wired the same as me, is first off, man, you know, you saying about you getting into like the mental stuff because, you know, you're not going to bench 500 pounds again. Like, dude, you're still stronger, fitter and faster than 99.9% of the population, and will ever be. They're not, you know what I mean? So I know it's obviously tempting to compare yourself to how you were at your best, but man, dude, you're still a freaking machine. Anyone go on frickin' Brian Alsruhe's Instagram, watch him frickin' chopping up logs. Dude, man, those logs that you chop up, frickin' hell, that, like, it might as well still be a tree, man. Like, just the tenacity alone to frickin' not give up on chopping those. Most people would give them a couple of whacks and just go, screw this is too hard, I'm getting the chainsaw out or whatever, you know? Yeah. Man, like, frickin' hell. But I think one thing also I do want to say is... just to sort of try and help people put themselves in your shoes, is getting back to when you sort of really in the throes of your illness with your worms and everything. Oh, that's just reminded me, I've got another question about that. But when you were like throwing up, like from the moment you woke up, and you said you were throwing up 50 times a day, and obviously you were losing weight because you couldn't eat, so you just instantly throwing up, and obviously as a result of that, your strength and your performance would have gone down massively. I really don't think it could be understated. Like for people like yourself, and I'm the same, man, that like for like training is like an emotional crutch for. If you've like grown up and from the moment you got into training, that is suddenly is almost like your therapy, and that's what's keeping you sane, and that's what's like really is just like almost like your church, your meditation, like everything. You know, that's like everything to you. To have that taken away from you. Brutally, like ripped from you, like that cannot be understated. Like the impact alone that I can imagine, just you suddenly not being able to train, or I'm sure, you know, I know that you were still trying to train, but let's face it, I expect it felt at time like a fool's errand. Like, you know, it would be like, obviously Drew obviously is here with us. Like Drew's like a really good guitarist. It would be like, if you're a musician listening, it would be like someone cutting off your hands one day and you never being able to play your guitar again. or whatever or if you're an artist, someone cutting off your hand so you can't draw a picture anymore, like whatever your therapy is, imagine something happening to you where that was brutally out of your control, being taken away from you. And I said that alone, let alone like being told that you know, were dying and all this stuff, and going all to these specialists and them saying, we don't know what's wrong with you, you're like super fit, but at the same time you're dying. Like, as I said, man, like I empathize with that massively, absolutely massively. But on a bit of a gruesome note, did you ever actually did you get to see when obviously you had your medication and stuff and you were cured, did you ever get to see the horrible worms that are inside of you?
I never saw them. So apparently you don't even ingest it through water or anything. Like with schistomiasis, you can literally just put your skin in water. And if the water has these snails in it, apparently they can swim through. A lot of people, it sounds real gross. If you look it up, you'll see worms growing out of people's feet who it gets real bad for. And it's horrendous. It's absolutely horrendous. Mine was bad, but it didn't get to the point where those people were. So, if
did they say how big the worms were?
What?
Oh, sorry, man. Sorry, man. I said, did they did they tell you how big the worms had gotten or anything like that?
No, really. Once I took the pills, it was just, you're gonna get better. Just keep, and it was a lot of pills because I had Lyme disease. I had a couple other parasites as well, and so it was kind of a couple rounds of antibiotic, anti-worming pills, like stuff you'd give your dog, and it just got better. It did.
No, it's crazy that you had Lyme's disease at the same time as well.
Yeah, and
so was that you literally had Lyme's disease at the same time as these worms?
Yeah, because after when I was 8 years old and we had that incident with the home invasion, we moved out to the country where it was much more rural and there were just less people and less everything around.
Yeah,
and
sure.
I moved on to 6 acres of land. My parents did, and they built a house, and so I grew up in the woods, and so I've dealt with Lyme disease literally multiple times. Even today, now, I moved into a really big wilderness property now, and still had to deal with it every single year. I at least get 1 to 2 bullseyes somewhere on me because I go camping all the time. I'm out doing bushcraft stuff, survival. I like survivalist stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. I think. The thing that I find crazy about that, though, and I know there's different types of ticks, isn't there? But I mean, we're in a very rural part of the UK, and where there's a lot of ticks around where we live. There's a lot of woodland, a lot of just rolling hills and stuff like that. But I know people that have basically been almost taken out of the game just by Lyme's disease, and just can't get out of bed, had to quit their job, basically almost having to rearrange their life so they can do everything from home because they can't really leave the house anymore. So I think it's a testament to your strength and willpower, man, that you're talking about ticks as almost it's an afterthought on Lyme disease, it's an afterthought on top of everything else you've had. But to some people that alone is a debilitating life condition, if you want to call it a condition.
It definitely hits
disease,
different
whatever,
people different ways.
Infection.
Some people get Lyme disease and it's literally they get a fever and it's nothing, right? And then the other people deal with it for their entire lives. It keeps coming back. Same as malaria, same as schistomiasis. People are why are you still throwing up if you don't have worms anymore? And I'm because much like malaria, some people just deal with bouts of it for the rest of their life. And I'm healing, right? I'm definitely healing and I'm getting better, but when you throw up every day, multiple times a day for years, it takes a long time for your body to get better. And man, anyone who's dealing with chronic illness of any kind is something that we talked about earlier that I wanted to talk about with the mental thing. Just mention real fast is you never know what people are going through. You know what I mean? So if you came up to me at some point and said something to me and I snapped at you, you didn't know what I was going through, or if somebody's mean to me or somebody cuts me off on the road, you don't know what they're rushing to, And if you are mean, like you said, you try to be a good person, but if you fail, don't be afraid to apologize. Be the first to apologize. Apologize fast and apologize often, and don't apologize without meaning it. But if you do something wrong, own up to it, because most people in this world are cool if you just are hey, you know what? That was all my bad. there's no excuses for what I did, but I think that's a huge message that people this day and age especially need to hear is like, be kind to each other.
Yeah.
And like, be willing to say you're sorry. Like, there's not a lot of things that I'm sorry can't cover, And if you're feeling bad about something about your past or something you said or something you did, go apologize. Like, release yourself and release that person, and hopefully there could be some mending there.
Oh yeah, 100%, man. I think that's I think I've said openly on this show before that I think that's like massively important, and I think some people are almost like scared to apologize for things because they think whether it's like they're embarrassed of somebody like throwing their apology in their face, or maybe they don't even want to admit that they were wrong in the first place. But I think I think I see it as a good thing. And if you're saying if somebody out there is afraid to apologize out of like a pride thing, then what I would say to you is I think that it's actually a sign of strength that you can apologize. You know, I think it's like
we
brave.
said, life's too short
because you're putting yourself on the line. You know.
Yeah. And if you need to apologize to your dad, your mom, your friend, your whatever, just go do it. It's too short, right? Like you never realize when the last opportunity that you had to do that is, and like to lose. Like I said, my friend Mike Jenkins, like always telling someone that I was going to do something, and just placating to them. That's, man, just do what you say you're going to do, and admit when you're wrong. Things will go a lot smoother.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, for sure, man. Going back to like your school life a little bit, man. Like, what was do you have like many memories of school? Like, what sort of student were you? Were you like a good kid or a naughty kid? Like, what lessons did you like and didn't like? Things like that.
I think I liked like gym, like recess where we got to lift weights, and I liked lunch. And outside of that, I'm dyslexic with numbers. So, like, I when I look at a phone number, right? Like, if you gave me a 7-digit phone number, or now I guess it's not digit, but or 10 digits, but if you give me 7 digits to write down, I will mess that up like 8 out of 10 times. I will not be able to do that. And so math and things like that were always very hard for me, and I was always told that I was kind of dumb. And I grew up in the 80s, and like they didn't test for stuff in the 80s. They didn't care. Either you got through or you didn't. Yeah. But also, thankfully, I was very good at baseball in like throughout like my high school, and I did baseball and martial arts were like my two things. And I was good enough at baseball that no teachers really were interested in kind of holding me back. You know what I mean? And I'd like to think that I'm a nice person and I'm a good person, and I always showed up to class. I liked going to school because my friends were around and stuff like that, but like I did not take my books home. I never learned to study. I never learned anything like that. So when I went into college, my very first time going to college where I actually was going to have to learn and study and do things, I didn't know how. And so my first GPA, my first semester, I think was like 0.6 or something like that. And I got put on academic probation where I buckled down and got like 0.7, got thrown out of college. And one of my professors was a dean of students, and he was like, listen, this guy's not dumb. He just doesn't get it. Like, we need to give him another shot. So they gave me another shot, and from that point on, I started climbing my way back out, and ended up barely graduating college, again with like criminal justice and sociology. But my GPA was not good, and I 20 years later, I guess 22, 23 years later, now I applied to go into grad school, and my GPA was so low. My SATs were abominable. Like, it was just terrible. But I was able to now explain, like, through my life experiences and stuff, that I do deserve a shot here getting into grad school. So they let me in, and it's been a completely different experience. Like, I've never had to like read the books and study and do stuff, but now I do, and I'm actually enjoying it. I'm learning and enjoying learning for the first time in my life. So, but no, I was a terrible student. Not good at any of it. I can read and write, like, and I do them pretty well. Like, I make a lot of my money through authoring books. So like those things I know I can do, but if you put a math problem in front of me, I literally I'm like, that's for somebody else.
Yeah, sure. I think I think with like the learning thing as well, you're like in a completely different place in your life now. I think obviously you're a lot wiser than you would have been, of course, when you were like a teenager in your early 20s. So it's like, it's just a different part of your life, isn't it? I'm sure you've got like so much more willpower to like sit down and read something that maybe when you were younger, you'd be like, man, I don't want to read this. And because you can't really force yourself when you're a teenager, can you? If you don't want to read something, you can be reading the words technically, but it's just not going in. Like, whereas I think with wisdom and maturity, you get better at that.
You do, and it's a different game too. Like, when you've been through other stuff in your life, like things that again that you would consider hard, you're like, really, I had to sit down and read this, or I had to watch this video, or I had to like. That's not hard. That just takes time. Like it might take patience, but it's not hard. None of it's hard. You know what I mean? I'm also not going to school for like aerospace engineering or something either. You know what I mean? Like. All of my stuff kind of subjective. It's a lot harder than people think it is because it's a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. And there's so many aspects to it that I didn't understand about communication and stuff. But it's not like it's a math problem that I have to get right or wrong, right? Like I have to support my answers and write papers and do things like that. So it's a different kind of grind. But yeah, I'm loving it. I'm loving learning everything that I'm learning. And like I said, it's truly changing how I communicate with the rest of the world because I've always been a coach or always a leader or always a something. So I never learned about empathy and listening and paying attention to what someone else said. Like somebody gave me a problem, I gave advice. That was the end of it. We moved on, right? And now actually like learning to listen to people and hearing what they're actually saying. And it completely has changed so many of my relationships for the better just because the classic thing that like every wife says about her husband is that he doesn't listen to her, he doesn't whatever. And it's literally taught me to be a little better at that. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but I'm saying I've gotten a little better. And that little bit of improvement in my communication skills has improved our relationship tremendously. So that's another piece of advice for anyone who's got a significant other, guy, girl, dog, whatever. Like, be a listener. It's a good thing.
Yeah. Do you think it's like one of those things, like whether it's because of your background in the gym, or I think maybe it's in general like a bit more of a man thing anyway, is like if like say your partner is talking to them about something, you assume that you're seeing it almost like as a problem that needs like an answer or like to be resolved like almost like instantly in some way. Whereas I think that maybe it's like a different way of looking at things, isn't it? As you said, just like listening. And maybe that's like almost like the therapy rather than it being like a question and answer approach.
100%. And I mean, so many times when you have a problem, like if you and I were going to sit here and complain, like commiserate back and forth, like you complain about something, I complain about something. And all we're doing is listening to each other. That's really all we're doing, right? Because so many times if I have a problem and you're like, well, why don't you do this? I'm like, I don't want answers. I'm just frustrated. I want to tell you how mad I am about this because it's stupid, right? Like,
so how dare you?
And that's exactly what like your significant other's doing when you're sitting there going, well, just do this, dummy. Like, why aren't you doing that? Why? It's not that hard. But she's like, my wife wants to talk to me about something, right? And just wants me to listen. And it's changed our relationship incredibly. And I'll also say like being 44 and a wiser man now, like it's a lot easier to listen than that impatient, I mean, I think about like you said, like how different your mind is when you're 18 years old and someone asks you what you want to do for the rest of your life. You're like, I don't know what I want to eat for dinner. Like, I don't have a clue. Right. And then you go to college and they're like, well, you need to make a career choice for the next 40 years or whatever. And you're like, I don't know what I want to do. You know what I mean? And here I am at 44 going, I'm completely restarting everything because literally like about every 7 to 10 years of my life, I completely reset. Like I said, like did the gym thing, did the counterterrorism thing, did the my own gym thing. Now I'm doing the grad school and mental health thing because like number one, life is far too short to only be obsessed with one thing for an amount of time. You know what I mean? Like as you grow, I really believe that like your goals need to change, your education needs to change, your not saying the education in that sort of way, but like your self-education. Like I don't have any education for lifting weights, but I've been a coach of world champions, right? Like, but my self-education for all of that has been extreme, and now I'm getting formal education because I need letters behind my name and stuff. But I really think like as you grow, like being able to adapt and change into whatever the next thing is going to be is very important, because you really do need to be able to sacrifice everything that you currently are for the next step that you're going to be, if you're going to enhance in some way. Like, you can't do the same things, have the same behaviors, and expect better results. That doesn't happen. You know what I mean? Like, it really needs to be a complete shift, whether it's in your diet, in your lifting, in your education, in your relationships, whatever it is that you're doing. A different approach typically goes very well, and for most people is more satisfying anyway, right? Like, if you're going to have to do the dishes as best as you possibly can, instead of just getting through it, and you'll enjoy it more. Like, just stuff, that sort of thing.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and again, I think that's something that obviously like training helps with, because I think if you really get into training and it is sort of like your crutch and you want to get really good at it, it's easy, as you said, even with something like the dishes, like you can transfer that. It's almost like, well, you wouldn't cut a workout in half just because you felt like it. I mean, in very extreme circumstances, whether it was like an injury or something, that might sometimes be the wise thing to do, but it's the exception, not the rule. Like, usually if you've got like a workout you've got to do, you will do it until it's done. So the same thing, you wouldn't do like half a set of dishes and then walk away, or do them half-assed. You would do the whole thing, and you would make sure the kitchen looked great by the time you left the kitchen.
Right. And you'll enjoy it more, right? Like, you will enjoy, the hardest part about working out is getting through the door, right? Like, it's getting all the things that lead up to actually getting in there and getting started and just getting that momentum going, because momentum is real, right? Like, it is so much easier to keep things going, keep your diet going clean, doing whatever. Like, making small, good decisions every single day is really what adds up, like bricks in a wall, The only difference between who you are right now and who you're going to be 5 years from now are all those little tiny decisions. And if you want to be in better shape, make better decisions. If you want to be a better person, make better choices. Like, and we all know that bad things happen, and they happen regularly, and sometimes they are catastrophic. But the thing is that bad things are happening to everyone, and some people get past it, some people use it as positive, and other people let it just completely destroy them. So it's really, again, another choice. And some choices are bigger than others, but who you're going to become is absolutely today. If you decide to put your shoes away, that matters. If you do the dishes well, that matters. If you finish your set of squats, that matters. Like, it all adds up to that end goal, just like bricks in a wall. And if you want to be better, it's really the choices that you make right now, today.
Yeah, I like what Jordan Peterson says, isn't it? It's like he says, like, if even if you're not going to accomplish anything else today, like, make your bed when you wake up. I always think that's really just like a nice little message, a nice little thing that's just for people to remember.
And if you accomplish small things like that,
get out of bed, make your bed.
Go ahead.
No, I was finished, man.
But no, like, doing small things like that, like, I have a rule that I operate better when there's not clutter around me and I'm not in like a messy room and stuff like that. And I operate under the rule that if it takes less than 2 minutes, do it right now. Like, when you go into your room and like you normally like throw down your jacket or you just kick your shoes off or whatever you do, it takes 2 minutes to put them away. Take that 2 minutes, put it away. You won't worry about it later. Keeps clutter. Like, just very basic things like that. Doing small little tasks like that build momentum, and they make you that. There's a whole speech where I think he's an admiral in the Navy, talks about you wake up and you make your bed, and then that starts the ball rolling, because if you make your bed, then it's easier to get your clothes out, or it's easier to take that shower, or it's easier to... There's a book called Atomic Habits that talks about building on those things, and man, people change their lives literally just by doing something as simple as waking up and making their bed, or putting their shoes away, or doing the dishes. It matters.
As you said, it's just building that momentum, isn't it? And then you want to get that up into like a freight train where the momentum's so strong, and it is just like this freight train, so it's hard then to break it down. Because what you don't want is that freight train to grind to a halt and then go the other way, like start going the other way. Because then you've got to work really hard to get back to it again.
And it's a lot easier to blow off like a workout, for instance. Like, if you're like, oh, I don't have time to go to the gym because I had to put my shoes away. I have to do the dishes. I have to do this. I have to do that, right? Like, you look at all those barriers and you're like, man, I can't work out today. I have 2 minutes to do. But if you've been just constantly knocking things off your list and just crossing them off, making little checks next to them, getting to the gym is going to be so much easier. Like, it's real. Like, people don't believe it. but that momentum is real, and it's so much easier just to keep that ball rolling than it is, like you said, like to stop everything. And man, momentum is true.
Yeah. One thing I thought would be interesting to ask you, obviously, you mentioned your wife earlier on, and I've obviously seen her in a lot of your videos in the past, and she just seems like an absolutely great woman and a great wife. Do you mind like me sort of like touching on that? Like, when did you meet like Elena, and how much of a crucial part of your life has she played, and like sort of what's the impact she's had on you like as a whole and like daily? I know she like trains with you, and she's like a little beast as well, like, you know, like the mini version. But yeah.
She I guess Elena and I have been together for we've been married for 15 years. Yeah, married for 15? Yes, we've been together for 15 years. And man, she is my support on absolutely everything. She is my rock. Like you said, we work out together. She works from home about half the time. I'm home all the time. So we spend every single morning, we spend time together drinking coffee and just talking. We spend every night sitting down together, eating dinner. We go for walks with our dogs at least twice a day. She literally is my therapist. She helps me whenever I'm getting ready to do something for a video. I'm bouncing ideas off her. Like, literally, she is such a help. Like, I can't even describe what different life I would have if it weren't for who she is and her strength. Because out of the two of us, mentally, she's the strong one. Emotionally, she's the strong one. Because she's very like even keeled. If something bad happens, she rides it better than I do. I'm way up, way down, way up, way down. Like, you can tell from this conversation, like, I get excited, I get sad, I get all kinds of things. I feel emotions very deeply. And
you're like an emotional guy. You're an emotional guy. You wear your heart on your sleeve.
Guy. It comes into my lifting. It shows up in my videos. It's everywhere, right? And so when I get high and when I get low, she's there to always kind of balance me out and give me good perspective on whatever it is. And I think I'd either be dead in prison or something if it weren't for that girl. Like, really, she's kept me in a good spot.
She comes across as such like an overwhelmingly positive person, which really cannot be understated, I don't think. No,
she's more positive than I am. Like, and I do my best to try to keep up with her with everything. We met, I guess I'm 5 years older than her. And so, like, our whole lives, I've kind of been going through the next stage of life, and then she kind of goes through it. And it's always been just such an interesting thing, like going through quitting our jobs together, and she took on her own therapy practice, and I was starting Everstate like at the same time, and it was just we both went from like having steady careers, which is rare, because typically you have one person with like a lot of risk tolerance and a lot of person who's kind of a little bit more scared of risk, and literally both at the same time we just had talks with each other and kind of support each other. And she was there at Everstate like every single day coaching while still doing her own thing, trying to get her practice going. And she was going through a lot of the stuff that I am currently going through with school back at that time. And I don't know how she did it all. It's absolutely incredible.
Yeah, man. Yeah, I say it's like she comes across as one of those people I say just like a beautiful human being. That's how she comes across.
She's awesome.
Yeah, man. I always think it's interesting to ask people. Obviously, you're known mainly for your training, and obviously you've touched on lots of different things that you sort of do and you're into today. But like one thing I thought was really cool a couple of years ago, you started sort of sharing with people, like you get into the little things like calligraphy, man. I thought that was freaking awesome. Like I'm really into my history, and I just thought it was awesome, man. And you started like putting out these little videos. Like, how did you get into that, and like why did you get into that?
Well, that was 100% because of Musashi. Miyamoto Musashi, famous samurai. I've always been a fan of his since I was a little kid because of martial arts and reading like the Book of Five Rings when I was like 11 years old, and trying to like understand that whole culture and stuff. So my whole life has been trying to balance out like the classic Braveheart, like warrior poet idea where like you are one side like this savage, right? Like savage physically, be able to do these awesome fighting things, this lifting stuff, all these other things, but balance it by reading a lot, doing calligraphy, drawing, finding a softer side of yourself, and also vulnerability. Like I'm a big believer in like showing that side of yourself. You know what I mean? Like not being afraid to share. There's a lot of times the guys like you'd look at a guy like me and you're like, well, that guy's not going to talk about his feelings. He's not going to talk about those things. But those are the interesting parts of people, right? Like it's cool that you're strong and it's cool that you lift weights and stuff. But like, there's nothing that I can't learn from you. You know what I mean? Like there's always somebody bigger, always somebody stronger. But to find out somebody's story and stuff, and I just think, again, like I said earlier, like spokes of a wheel, the more well-rounded you are, like physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, all those things count to make a full person. And I truly believe in working in all those things all the time. And obviously there's some times when you're pushing a little bit more towards the physical, or you're pushing a little bit more towards the emotional or whatever it needs to be at the time. But it's just really trying to stay balanced as an individual, and that's really where it came from, because he was like the greatest swordsman of all time, but also beautiful artist, beautiful writer, beautiful calligraphist, and so just taking some of those ideas and just learning the mindfulness and the patience and the time that it takes to actually go through and learn a completely different art, you know.
Yeah, man, and it's interesting to like sit and dwell on from like a philosophical point of view, isn't it? Because let's face it, right? We all have this beast inside of us, and we all had ancestors. Like, let's face it, if you were alive today, 100% you had ancestors that were like freaking killing in battle, hunting, like all the freaking time. If you're alive today, that's 100% a fact. I don't think anybody on the planet wouldn't have had an ancestor that would have fought in battles and skirmishes and raids from other villages, whatever it might have been, and yeah, hunting all the time. There's this like beast inside of us that needs to almost like be satiated. Do you know what I mean? And with like the training and the savageness and that, like, do you know what I mean? I don't think there's anything wrong with indulging that, because if not, it's going to build up, and that's probably how you get murderers. Do you know what I mean? Like you need to sort of have an outlet for that, and almost like push it to as much of an extreme as you can or you feel comfortable with. But then, yeah, also, you know, we're complicated creatures, we're well-rounded creatures, and we also experience love and we experience sadness and stuff like that, and it's and creativity, and it's important to push those boundaries to their extreme as well. And as you said as well, just because you're like a big guy that lift weights and you can frickin' lift however many pounds and stuff, like if you try and come across like I don't have feelings because I'm such a tough guy, like it's obvious to everybody as well that's just like a front, isn't it? Because of course, like, you know, we all have our rough days and, you know, stuff like that. Like if you're trying to make out you don't, then it's clearly a lie, you know?
Right. Yeah, and if you're at the point where you have built a certain amount of strength, or a certain amount of, you're at a certain low body fat, or you're a bodybuilder, or you're whatever the case may be, like there's a reason why you're doing it, right? Like there is a mental side to why you are unhappy enough with your current state that you want it to be better, right? Like if we were all just like mentally chill and we were like, no, man, I'm good how I am. I'm happy about it, but that's not how I am. I'm always this could be better. I need to work on that, or I could be stronger. My performance is lagging here, or whatever the case may be. And I don't think that's an unhealthy thing either. I think just like anxiety, there's a certain level of anxiety that is good because it makes you do stuff and it makes you get up off the couch and get things done. But then if you have like irrational anxiety where you're catastrophizing bad things happening that there's no real proof of it, then that's not good anxiety, right? Like, and if you're a person who's so obsessed with their body that they have body dysmorphia or become anorexic or something, that's the pendulum swinging too far one way. But at the same time, if you like, you need to look at your current state and be like, physically, I want to be a little better than I am, right? Like all of us could improve somehow, whether it be your cardiovascular fitness or your mobility or your whatever, right? Like everyone could get better in that category somehow. Not saying like you need a six pack or you need a big that's for some people and not for others. It doesn't matter. But you should be trying to, you get one meat vehicle in your life. Like use it as well as you possibly can, right? Like treat it as good as you can. Get as much out of it while you're able to, because the time's coming where you're not going to be able to you could get in a car accident today and never walk again. Don't you wish you would have went for a run?
Yeah.
Like, I think about those athletes who don't have their arms and stuff. And, like, sometimes I go in, I lift just simply because I'm too blessed not to, right? Like, I have this healthy body. I've recovered from this sickness. I've got these things going. And if I don't do that, that's literally like slapping God in the face and being like, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we're all given so many gifts of, like, breathing with our own lungs and our hearts are working. And if you don't push those to some level, like, that's a gift that you are not being a good steward of. And, like, really, that's a jerk move because it can get taken away. And there's plenty of people. I know plenty of dudes who don't have legs that would die to do a 20-set squat workout where their legs are burning like crazy and they're dying and they're throwing up. They would love to do that. And, like, if you're going to sit there and complain about it, you need a little perspective.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, 100%. Like, looking at it, like, from the mindset, like, if your body is even well enough to work out, then it's almost like a shame to not do it because you're taking for granted this machine that you've been given that can do all of these amazing things, and you're not utilizing it. It's like having a freaking Corvette in the garage that you just never drive or something. Do you know what I mean? Just letting it collecting dust.
Yeah.
You know, like, it wants to be driven and it wants to be pushed to the extreme every now and again, you know, and it's a fun thing to do. Like, why wouldn't you do that?
Right. And it only
I think there's also a level of, like, physical preparedness.
Go ahead.
Yeah, 100%, man, 100%. No, I was going to say, I think also, like, just from a physical preparedness standpoint, like, obviously you were talking about when you were younger in Baltimore and there was that home invasion with you and your sisters. Like, if you could be put in a similar situation as that now, I'm talking from, like, an outsider's point of view. So if you were walking by a house and you saw the same thing happening to some other kids and a fully grown man was breaking into that house, it's also like a physical preparedness thing. Like, you know that you can have a good impact on the world by being physically prepared enough to go and take care of that situation, and you could save those kids. And, like, that alone is almost like if that was your only accomplishment in life, then you could like, die an honorable man. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, so it was like crazy. I remember it was not like, no, sorry, go on, man.
No, you go ahead.
Oh no! All I was gonna say is it was like it's mad, and I don't know if it's because people are so out of touch, or I should say, a lot of people are so out of touch with physicality and stuff nowadays. But it was and I sort of thought it was crazy at the time because I was, like, looking around and I was thinking, like, is no one, like, is no one gonna do anything? But it wasn't like last Christmas, but the Christmas before. I was just, like, in the supermarket. I just went to, like, the supermarket on my way home just to grab some stuff, and like, some guy was, like, running out the shop and he was, like, shoplifting, and he had, like, some bottles of booze in his hand, and there was, like, one like, teenage like, girl, essentially, like, female member of staff that was, like, chasing this guy, and she was, like, screaming stop, and the supermarket was, like, packed, right? And, you know, obviously I heard the commotion, like, looked over. And as I said, that the supermarket was, like, full, you know, it was, like, pre-Christmas stuff. It was, like, you know, it was hard to, like, walk down the aisle without bumping into people. And just nobody was doing anything. There was this one other woman who was probably about the same age as my mother, like some, like, lady in her 60s that then tried to help. And there was nobody else that helped anything. So I thought, right, well, obviously I'm going to have to do something here because this situation has not been taken care of, and he's clearly going to get out the shop unless someone intervenes. So I did intervene, and got, like, the, you know, gave the good, you know, helped the ladies, like, get the goods back and stuff like that. But I remember, like, afterwards thinking that was, like, crazy in terms of just, like, there were probably, like, 50 men in, like, the immediate vicinity, you know, and hundreds of people in the shop. And as I said, you know, just, like, almost in terms of that, you got to think, as I said, that physical preparedness, like, what sort of person do you want to be when there's an emergency situation and somebody needs help, or somebody's trying to take advantage either of the system or of somebody else? Like, do you want to be physically capable of helping in that situation, or do you just want to sit by and let it happen? Because I know that if I hadn't done anything, it would bother me for days. It'd bother me now if I thought back on it now and the guy got away. You know, it'd bother me now. I think back on it and I feel, like, ashamed of myself, you know?
And also, if you don't have the physicality to have the confidence, because, like, you need to mentally, like, that is a physical situation, but it's also a mental situation, right? Because all those people who didn't do something either didn't believe that they could, they should, they would, or that someone else is going to do it, right? Everyone always thinks someone else is going to handle it, but you who are physically prepared and mentally have been like, well, if something ever goes down, I'm going to act. I'm not going to be a bystander and just watch something terrible happen or become a victim or whatever. Like, I'm going to do something. And the body won't go where the brain hasn't gone, you know what I mean? And so, like, you being able to go through and do that, it just shows that you're like a man of action. And that alone right there is just, that's awesome. And then having the physicality to be able to back it up that's the whole game. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I think sometimes, and it depends on the individual, obviously, and what your lifestyle is like, how often this happens. But you are going to be put in situations every now and again. It might be every day, depending on your profession, and it could be once every 10 years. But every now and again, you're going to be put in a do or die situation, aren't you? And in that moment, you have to act real fast. And it's a decision, isn't it? It's like, do I do this thing now or do I not? Right. And I think you almost need to think beforehand, like, be aware of that things like that are going to happen, and think, okay, in those situations, what sort of person do I want to be?
1,000%. I 1,000% agree with that. And I think going through mental situations, like I said, in my old job, my counterterrorism job, there was more stuff where you had to be more aware and things like that. But even now, like when I go into a store or something, like I notice exits, I look around at like different people around. I'm like, that's a cool person. If something goes down, they look physically fit. That person looks dangerous. You know what I mean? Like, you just make assumptions so that you just have some situational awareness when you walk into a room and you're like, if something goes down, there's a fire extinguisher, there's an AED, there's an exit, there's a this. Like, because when a situation happens, you don't have time to sit there and go, you know, I wish I knew where a fire extinguisher was. It's like when stuff's going down, you want to have already gone there and made a decision so that you are already acting without, you know. And that, man, that's a big part about being a participant in life. You know what I mean? Instead of letting life happen to you, you are happening to life.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting. It's funny how you do get so many extreme ends of the spectrum in that, like, as you say, with yourself and stuff. I know a couple of other people like this as well. Like my uncle Dom, he's like a decorated police officer for like 25 years, and he was a really, he was one of those coppers that is like gave coppers a good name. You know what I mean? Because I think obviously cops get a lot of bad press. Mm-hmm. Some of it is deserved, maybe some of it isn't. But I think ultimately, we need to remember that whether it's like teachers or anything in life, there's going to be good guys and there's going to be bad guys, and not to sort of try and overgeneralize it. You got to treat people as individuals and sort of deal with the person you're dealing with at the time. But he was a really good guy. He was like the sort of guy that while a lot of coppers were like sitting out, on the side of the roads, like eating donuts, waiting to pull someone over speeding because they're doing 2 miles over the limit. Like he was chasing some guy on PCP down the frickin' canal for 10 miles, who'd like just been involved in some like serious assaults or something like that. Do you know what I mean? He's a big inspiration to me as my blood. But I see it with him. It's like he goes into every situation, he goes into every building. He's analyzing every single potential hazard, every single person in the room. He's like checking it out, and I can tell that you're 100% like it as well. And it's really interesting. And I know other people like Drew, for example. And he's like so laid back, he's horizontal, like he doesn't know like what shoes he's wearing today, like.
I wish I could be more like that sometimes, man. I do. I wish I could turn it off a little bit. Yeah.
How one thing I thought was really cool, man, obviously when your sort of life transitioned a little bit, I guess, around like when COVID kicked off and everything like that, is obviously you started putting out way more videos of your like outdoorsman stuff. Yeah. I know you said that you grew up with your dad and he was in construction and he was always making you like dig holes and chop logs and stuff like that, but like how did you get those outdoorsman skills? Because it's not something you just like get overnight. Like you're clearly like very impressive. Like you've got good carpentry skills. Whether it's like whittling spoons or it's like making little cabins. I saw you made like a little cabin on your property. Was it like for log storage or I can't remember? But you're always doing something. And these are impressive skills. How did you get into that?
Really? So when COVID hit, the gym shut down because we had shut down gyms, and I was kind of done. Like I was coaching all the time, doing videos all the time, just was getting over being sick, and I was kind of done. So we leave the gym open. The gym is open to all the members, and everyone gets to go for free. But I don't go there and coach very often anymore. I just am there sometimes. and since I don't like provide class and stuff like that, it works out pretty well. And also in 2020, I moved into a property that is a wilderness reserve. It's a really big piece of property with like a river and some streams, and it's mountainous.
It looks beautiful, man.
Caves. It's amazing, right? I can't believe that I get to live here every single day. And but I have always been into like firewood and splitting wood and doing stuff like that. And like I said, after Baltimore, I grew up in like the wilderness, like making tree forts and stuff. And then I had seen on YouTube where some guys, I can't pull this off, but some guys can make like tree forts and basically get millions of views on it. And they now like Range Rover sponsors them to like build tree forts. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I'm like, well, I'll try to build a
yeah.
tree fort then. And so literally that's what it's been, is just me learning these skills. Like, because there's so many sources. Like YouTube is such a great source for like learning any skill, whether it be like fixing your toilet, how to lift, or learning bushcraft stuff. And so literally it's just
literally anything.
It's been great. Like I've loved it. So I love being in the woods. I love spending time alone, and that's kind of like mental meditation or physical meditation for me. You know what I mean? Because when you're out in nature like that, like the sounds, all types of things, I'm blanking on the book that talks about it, but it talks about how much your creativity kicks up and stuff. And somebody who makes their living by making videos and writing books and stuff like that, creativity is a big thing. And when you've made videos every single week for a decade, this isn't like a TV show where you get like a season off and there's 12 writers for like the sitcom or whatever. Like every single video, I write, I produce, I rehearse, I record, I edit, you know what I mean? And like at this point, like getting that creativity back has just been awesome. And I get it so much just through being in nature, and it calms me down. And like I said, it's therapy. And after going through the chronic illness and kind of being on the other side of it now, it was time for a change in my life. You know what I mean? Like I said, like I basically went from like a manic, suicidal, throwing up multiple times a day dude to I need to kind of reevaluate how things are. And it's just now that I'm kind of getting back into wanting to be part of society again, wanting to be part of just everything like that. Because for a long time, it's been about healing myself and like mentally becoming okay from like chronic illness. Chronic illness is a hard thing for anybody. Like you see people on the other side of cancer or something that they've been through that was really rough. It takes some time. It really does to kind of get back and be able to interact in the same type of way. And I think a lot of people don't understand that. Even like friends of mine are like, how come you never hang out and stuff? And I'm like, it's just, it's taken me a while. Like I'm okay now. I'm getting back into it, but it takes time, you know?
Man, I think some people that have been through what you've been through would probably have gone like completely insane. So I think it's completely understandable to at least, need like a healing period.
Yeah. But I am feeling better now. So I
think there is something like great. Man, I'm so pleased to hear that, dude. Just to touch on that a bit some more. So like, do you still feel like you're in this healing process, like physically, like not mentally, but physically? Do you still feel like your body is healing? And have you like spoken to doctors? Have they said like, oh, this is how long probably it's going to take you to fully heal from this? Because I remember, I think one of your videos I watched years ago, you said that like these worms were like essentially eating your organs, which I can only imagine the toll that would have on your body. So are you still healing up inside?
I am still healing. And I don't know how long it'll affect me. Just like I said with like malaria, like some people are affected for the rest of their lives and some people will be fine and then have bouts and stuff like that. So I don't really know. And I don't even, at this point, now that I'm at like a good spot where I can train regularly, I can do the things I want to do, I'm not like emotionally paying the toll of always being sick, I don't really care anymore. You know what I mean? I'm just happy for each and every single day that I get the opportunity to do it.
Yeah, man, 100%. I have to say, when like your life right now, at least from an outsider looking in, man, I'm like really envious, man. I said like I'm similar to you, like I love being out in nature and stuff, and I see sort of like your house in the middle of freaking nowhere, and you've got your home gym, and you're just almost like living a nice quiet simple life with your missus, but I think it's like, what more could you want than that? You know.
This is what I was working towards my whole life. You know what I mean? Was getting to this point. Now I'm at this point, and it's been awesome. Like, I love it, but I'm also an individual who always needs another goal or another. I always want to be improving, and so that's where the grad school. I wasn't going to go to grad school until literally like a year ago. I made a decision and applied, and then I've been in for a while now. So that's just going to be my next step. You know, I don't think I'll ever stop making videos. I think the videos will change some because I've said I don't know how much more I can say about squatting. I don't know how much more I can tell you about deadlifting. Yeah, sure. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, but I can talk more about the mental side of things. And even like right now, going through like injuries and stuff, like talking about getting through setbacks, getting through injuries, like how you're going through a grieving process, like those types of things that now I'm understanding more as I'm more mature and I'm learning more about the mental and emotional side of things. How much quicker can I help an individual work through an injury if they watch that video as opposed to, you know what I'm saying? So I think that's where they'll end up going.
100%, man.
But I'm really looking forward to this next stage of my life.
Yeah, man. I think, you know, like, let's face it, we all evolve, and I think you've got to sort of flow with that evolution rather than trying to like stick to something, you know, oh no, I need to do what I used to do or something like that, you know. And I think the people that follow you will appreciate that journey as well, that natural journey, rather than you trying to force yourself to be something maybe that you were 5 or 10 years ago, you know. Right.
And I've proven that I will I'll break myself, like you said, like. I'll get to the point where I'm like, I want to hit my old numbers. I want to do that. And I got to listen to my body a little bit because I've had 5 years of chronic illness and age.
Mate, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so to think that I can do something
it's interesting.
Go ahead.
No, sorry, man. Go on.
No, you're good.
No, you just. Oh, cool. Yeah, no, I was just going to say, it's interesting when I was talking to Alan Thrall, we were talking about you because, and it was, I'm sure you'll be very pleased to hear this, but even though he was being very flattering about you, you know, he said, I asked him, out of all the, you know, he was talking about how interesting it was for him when he first got big on YouTube and, you know, how he was sort of like fangirling when he first met certain people and stuff like that, you know, like the first time he met people like Mark Bell and you know, and other people. But one of the things I asked him was like, you know, who were the people that were just the same sort of off the camera as they were on the camera, and some of the most like decent guys he'd met. And he said you were one of the people he mentioned. He said like Joey Satsbury, you and Omar, I think were the 3 guys that he said sort of came to mind. I'm sure there are others, but those were the 3 that came to his mind immediately. And do you know what? I've just had a brain fart. I don't know where I'm going with this.
Let me tell you.
What did you just say?
So,
yeah, go on.
Alan Thrall is one of the best people that I've met through this whole YouTube experience. Alan Thrall is definitely right there at the top. And before I had made it on YouTube whatsoever, I had like 300 followers or something. And I reached out and he was doing a Q&A and I said, how do I get more followers on YouTube? And he answered the question. But when he reached out, he was like, hey man, I saw a video of you almost die on a 315 bench. And like 3 plates on the bench. And at the time, I was benching like 5 plates on the bench. And I was like, that wasn't me, but thank you so much for answering the question. Anyway, he checked out my channel.
Yeah.
He was like, I like what you're doing. And he invited me to do a collaboration with him for his page. And that's how I got big on YouTube. Like literally, it was like the most, it's like what you want to happen. Like, I had like 300 followers, and I came back from the gym one day, and I had like 500 followers, then 1,000 followers, then 3,000 followers, then 5,000 followers. And it was literally like the dream, right? Like I had quit my job, I had opened a gym, it wasn't going spectacular, and now this was just growing. And I don't think I would be, I know that I wouldn't have gotten where I got to if it were not for Alan Thrall. So, like, my internet success, I 100% attribute to him giving me an opportunity on his platform.
Man, you're both a credit to sort of the lifestyle you guys live as well, because and to like sort of strength athletes, whatever you want to call it. Because I mean, two of the, as you're both as nice as decent a human being as anybody we've ever had on the show. We've had such a wide variety of guests from all different walks of life, but couldn't ask to talk to two nicer guys as well, Man, and as I said, both machines, which is the irony, is both absolute machines. Alan's former US Marine. You worked in counter-terrorism, done martial arts all your life. So you could kill people, but you choose to be really decent human beings, and that, I think, that speaks volumes.
Alan's a very decent human being. I will say Alan's a very decent human being.
Yeah, I've remembered what I was going to say though. Yeah, when I was talking to Alan and he brought you up, we were both saying about you, and it reminded me what you were saying about you're not wanting to push it too hard now because you might get injured if you try and do stuff that you were doing a while back. We were both sort of saying, because you have such a Terminator mentality with your training. As I said, that's one of the reasons I love watching your channel, because when you're watching you train, as I said earlier, it's like watching a man possessed. I'm just like, what fire is in that guy that is making him do this? Because most people would have gotten tired like frickin' 5 minutes into this crazy stuff that this guy's doing, But we were saying, with you, with a lot of people, the problem is having the work ethic or the grit to actually do the hard workouts. Whereas with someone like you, it's the opposite problem. He was, it's like saying man, calm down a little bit. Stop, because you can tell you've got this thing where you can override any mental part of you that's saying please stop now, this is quite uncomfortable. You can override that so easily and just go, no, push more. That with you, the thing is much more being man, please stop before you hurt yourself again, because we all freaking think you're an awesome guy, man. We love you, but we do not want you to we'd see in your next video that you've got this new injury or something like that,
I'm done getting injured, man. I'm done getting injured. I'm ready to be healthy for a little bit. It's been long enough. So good.
Yeah, man. Just to sort of touch on diet and nutrition and that, obviously it's a massive part of working out. You need to fuel the machine, and obviously a lot of people are just as interested in the sort of the diet and nutrition side of things as they actually are the workouts. What's your sort of your sort of diet philosophy? What's your approach to diet, and what sort of what is your diet like? What's a day-to-day your eating like for you?
Mine's kind of different because I can't hold a lot of food in my stomach still. So a lot of my stuff comes from protein shakes, which a lot of people would disagree with, but that's what I have to do. You know what I mean? Because my body can handle liquid a lot easier. It can stand chewing dried chicken and stuff like that. But I always get a good dinner. I keep my protein pretty high. I keep my fat pretty high. I keep my processed food and my carbs relatively low. That's how I stay in my calorie deficit, is more cutting the carbs out. But I when it comes to diet, it's really, really tough because there's so many voices out there saying so many different things that is so overwhelming, and I'm in the space, and I'm it's overwhelming for me, and I know what they're saying, right? So for the average person, I just try to keep it as simple as possible for people, and for the majority of individuals, if you are eating some sort of protein with every single meal, and you're filling up the majority of the rest of that with some sort of vegetables or even fruit, and you're just keeping your processed foods down to a minimum, you're going to do better. I don't think people need to be weighing all their chicken breasts and counting their calories and stuff like that. There's always time to get stricter. You can always get more strict. You can always cut out more things. But when people are counting how many calories are in their toothpaste and looking at their ketchup, I'm ketchup is not the problem. That's not the problem,
Yeah, sure.
And so for me, I tell people if you want to start eating better, the first thing that you got to do is be mindful of what you're doing. So I tell people just to write down for about a week, because it's a big pain. But before you put something in your mouth, write it down on a piece of paper. So if you're going to eat 12 cookies, you need to say, 12 cookies, you know what I mean? Just so that you're actually looking at what you're actually putting in your mouth, because so many times people eat when they get home from their job or they get home from school or whatever the case may be out of habit, you know what I mean? Or you come home late at night and you're it'd be great. Ice cream would be great right now, and just becoming mindful of what you're actually putting in your mouth is very important. And then also doing food prep. I'll choose one day a week where I will get a casserole dish and bake 10 chicken breasts so that I'll have them in little containers, storage containers throughout the week, so that I don't have the option to make bad choices. If I'm out somewhere and I have my food packed, then I have good food with me, and I have to actually decide, to not eat the food that I already made, paid for, did everything. And you know what I mean? So for me, I just think being smarter about your choices, being mindful about your food, because you can get more strict, right? Like you can start counting macros, you can start counting calories, you can start counting your steps, you can start keeping up with a lot of metrics that can make you a very neurotic person that is thinking about nothing but the food that's going in their mouth every single second, every single day. And I really, when people start getting like that, they just get annoying, right? Like no one wants to hang out with that person.
Yeah,
I've been that person.
For sure, man.
No one wants to hang out with them. So it's like, man,
mate, I've been that person too.
Yeah, and it's not fun. It's not fun to be that person. It's not fun when like you're like, hey man, do you want to come out and get something to eat? And they're like, no, I can't do that. That's not. And it's like, man, you have to have some balance in everything. And you know, I've been the person who's like, no, all strict, all this, all that, many times in my life. But the older I've gotten and the more that I've lived and understood, I'm like, you know what? That is not that important. Like one meal isn't going to like destroy you. Like you're going to be okay, but you have to make smarter choices. Just like we said with the only difference between who you are now and 5 years from now, those small little choices. You need to make more good choices and smart choices and correct choices than bad choices. And if you do that, you can decide how strict you want to be from there. If you want a super shredded six-pack, you're going to need to be more strict. But if you want to be in reasonable shape, it's just about making reasonable decisions. Because everyone knows, like, chicken breast and broccoli is better than cake. Everyone knows that, right? But we choose not to.
Yeah.
You know?
I think it's like massively important to like look at the big picture. Like don't obsess over small details. Like as you said, you know, try and get some clean, unprocessed protein sources, balanced diet, wide variety of nutrients, wide variety of macro and micronutrients. You know, vegetables like fruit, stuff like that. And don't obsess about the small things. And like look at like consistency is the most important thing. So if you make sure you're doing that 80% of the time. Going out for a burger and chips once a week with your missus or a friend doesn't matter. If you have a big bowl of spaghetti once a week, it doesn't matter. Like, don't sweat the small things. Like, especially if you're working out all the time, if you're the sort of person that's going on either like, you know, you run, you do burpees, you go hiking, you're lifting weights all the time, and 80% of your diet is clean protein and vegetables and fruit and stuff, and then you're like freaking out because you've had like pasta, then it's too far. You've gone far too far, like, you know. And on the flip of that, if you're not working out at all and you're never walking or hiking or doing anything at all, but you're obsessing over like how much kale you've eaten today, then that's ridiculous.
I agree too. It's gotta be about balance. You know what I mean? Consistent. You said it. Yeah. Consistency is king. Like, it really is.
Yeah, man. Nice, dude. Just to finish off, Brian, I've got some quick fire questions for you, if that's all right. I always think it's interesting to finish with this because it's nice to finish off like learning like little interesting things about people that you probably wouldn't find out about otherwise. Oh, actually, before I ask you that, I'll just ask you a little question that's always fun to ask somebody like yourself. If you wanted to build a strong, well-rounded athletic physique, but you were only allowed to do 10 exercises for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Specific exercises would be sandbag or Atlas stone. Those are kind of interchangeable. So sandbag or Atlas stone load, like over top of a bar or extension.
Yeah.
Sandbag or Atlas stone to shoulder. The deadlift, the front squat, the Zercher squat, the regular squat, overhead press, some sort of overhead press with leg drive, whether it be a jerk or a push press. Kettlebell swings, and we'll go for Romanian deadlift. But yeah, that'd be my 10.
Nice.
I don't know.
So
I forgot about pull-ups. I forgot about dips. I like both of them. Sprints, those are good. But I just went with strength. If you did those 10 strength exercises well, though, you'd be doing okay. But you do still need to sprint. You still need to do pull-ups. You still need to do those types of things as well.
Yeah. Nice, man. Yeah, no, I think it's nice. It's nice to ask people like yourselves questions like that, because I think some people get so overwhelmed with what to do in the gym, and I think it's a little bit similar to what we were just saying about the diet. You hear so many things, whether it's in magazines or watching videos, and it's like the secret best bicep curl exercise ever. You know what I mean? Or like you do this to get like a body like Arnold or whatever. And it's like there's so many exercises out there, and people that aren't, are just trying to step their foot into this world for the first time are probably so overwhelmed with like training and diet advice, and they're like, man, what the hell do I do? But it's like what you've basically described is like, is the good core basics. And actually, if you go back, even for like bodybuilding, if you go back, I guess, to like where people like Reg Park and Steve Reeves back in the day, they used to do all the exercises that you just mentioned.
Yep, like barbell rows, squat variations, deadlift variations, some sort of functional training, sprinting, moving your body.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Like really, it's a weighted
press.
carry.
Yeah.
Squat variations, deadlift variations, overhead press variations. It's pretty simple. You know what I mean?
Yeah, man. I think it's such an important thing. I think whenever someone comes to train with me for the first time, I always say like, really, at least for me, obviously everyone's different. But I think like I want to make my workouts as simple and as basic as possible. I don't want to be over confusing things and doing a million exercises in the gym. I want to pick exercises that give you a lot of bang for your buck, and pick, say I'm doing like a full body workout. I want to pick like 4 or 5, 6 exercises I'm going to do that day, and then by the time I leave the gym, my whole body is toast, like head to toe.
And there's a difference between being busy and being productive. And there's a lot of people who go in the gym and they're very busy. There's a lot of people with their diet are very busy. But like the basics consistently done well are the key to uncommon results, I'm excited about these rapid fire questions.
100%. Yeah, man. This is a nice little fun one. What's your favorite movie? Nope.
You know what? It's the new King Arthur, not new King Arthur movie, but the King Arthur movie, Legend of the Sword, the Guy Ritchie movie. No one likes this movie.
Do you know what? I haven't seen that.
Watch it. It's good. But keep an open mind. Otherwise, I was going Bloodsport from like 1983.
Yeah, I will. Oh, well, Van Damme.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I was my brain went there, and I was like,
legendary movie.
But yeah, check out the King Arthur movie. It's a Guy Ritchie movie. It's good.
Man, I 100% will check that. I love my fantasy movies and stuff like that. Like I'm a big, a not so secret nerd. So I love like my Lord of the Rings and fantasy and stuff like that. So I'll definitely enjoy checking that out. But yeah, Bloodsport, what a movie, and it's interesting, and I'm sure you're the same. But I know I mentioned my Uncle Dom earlier, but he used to babysit me all the time, and he basically like brought me up on like Van Damme movies, Arnold Schwarzenegger movies, like all the classics. So like to me that was almost like my gospel, like I was watching like Bloodsport, like Kumite, stuff like that, like old school Van Damme flicks, man, like AWOL, all the classic freaking Van Damme movies, like man, epic movies. And like no wonder that some people end up the way they are, like in terms of just like loving going to the gym and stuff, like being brought up on those sort of things.
True, it's true.
What's your favorite food?
Probably pizza.
Yeah, that's a good one. Who doesn't like pizza, man?
Yeah.
I'm suspicious of anybody that doesn't like pizza. And like, what would be your go-to pizza?
Usually pepperoni and onion is my go-to right now.
Nice.
But man, yeah. I like
What's
pizza.
your thoughts? What's your thoughts on like what's your thoughts on people putting pineapple on pizza? Is that a yay or nay for you?
I think it depends on what I'm feeling. Like I'm a fan sometimes. Okay. But I'm definitely not one of those guys who like is like a I just let people do what they want to do with pizza, man. I don't have a lot of
that's such a democratic outlook on pizza, because people like people are like seem quite like strongly in one camp or the other with that, don't they? Oh man, it's like a very diplomatic approach. What's your favorite music, like bands, or what sort of music do you like to listen to, whether it's like in the gym when you're in your car or whatever?
I like if I'm in my car, I listen to a lot of like 90s rock because that's what I like, grew up on. You know what I mean? Like a Blink 182,
like what sort of bands?
Like that group, you know.
Oh.
And then, but when I'm in the gym, it's very eclectic. Like myself and Uncle Nick used to do reggae all the time, so I do a lot of reggae.
Nice.
We keep it chill in the gym. We don't go real heavy because like you said, I can switch it. I can switch it on in like a second and be a different person really fast. And if I'm listening to stuff that gets me too hyped up, then I will be too hyped up before my like main set and then won't have it left. You know what I mean? So I try to stay real chill, and then when it's time to turn it on, I just flip the switch and go.
Yeah, man. That's cool. What's your favorite color?
Gray. Strangely enough. I don't even know that that's a color. I think that's more of a pigment or tint or something. But yeah, I've always liked gray. Like when I was growing up, I painted my room gray. I've had gray vehicles. Like, it's always been my color.
That's really interesting. I don't think I've ever like any not just doing this show, just meeting people in life. I don't think I've ever heard anyone say gray is their favorite color before. Yeah. But I appreciate how unique that is. One thing I'd also just like to sort of mention as just like an observation of mine, really, that I think is always really interesting is it's obviously, we're on separate sides of the pond. Like, you're in the US and I'm in the UK, but one thing I always find interesting about so when I see your videos, like where you live in Maryland, and I mean I've always heard that there's lots of places on the East Coast of the US that are very similar to the UK, and it's probably one of the things that were appealing to British and European settlers when they started sort of going over there all those hundreds of years ago. But yeah, it's like, man, like where you live in Maryland, it looks pretty much just like where we live here in Somerset. Just like an interesting observation.
And like I said, I've been to the UK like 30 times, and I will say where you live does look, it's literally almost, it looks the same almost, like environment wise. And I love the UK, man. I love everything about you guys.
Oh, thanks so much, man. That means a lot. I mean, I love the US as well, man. Like I say, I think there's a lot of there's a lot of people both in the UK that sort of say that they hate the UK, and a lot of people in the US that say they hate the US, and there's a lot of people in the US that say they hate the UK, and vice versa. But man, I think I think America is one of the very few places in the world that I would happily, like, I would be just as happy living there as here. And I think basic things that I really appreciate in life, like freedom of speech, basically sort of being able to do what you want to do, like, not obviously, to an extent, but, just that freedom, and the culture. Obviously, we are sort of like cousins from across the pond, I think, and I let's face it, no country is perfect, but I think overall what the US stands for, I'm very much in support of that, and I'm proud that the UK is allies with the US.
Man, I just, I don't think I've ever met a really mean-hearted person in the UK that I've actually interacted with. Like, everyone's been like so much more chill and so much more cool and just less judgy, it feels like, than it is in America. So like, I've always loved going over. They've been awesome. Like, literally everyone that I've run into, and like the stuff that, I guess, the priorities and the way that you guys live your lives, there's a lot of things that I think are cooler than, at least here on the East Coast of the US. Like, things are very like fast paced, and when I spent time over there, like, it just, I like the priorities, and like I said, any time that I can come visit, I love going every single time. Never had a bad time in the UK. Man,
if you're ever over in the UK again, man, like, shoot me a message if you want to go hiking, or if you want me to like send you to some frickin', give you the insider knowledge of some awesome place to go or anything like that, dude, then that would be an absolute honor to me, man. And get a workout in and go for a fat hike or something, dude, and just sort of shoot the breeze, man. That'd make my year, dude.
I would love it. I would love it. Seriously, I would love to do that.
Yeah,
it's been fun, man.
Yeah, man. Well, keep it in mind. Yeah. It's been really fun, man. Thank you so much for your time, Brian. As I said, I've been such a big fan of you ever since I first sort of found your channel. I can't even remember how I found it now. It might have even been, as you said, it might have been something to do with Alan Thrall back in the day. I don't know. But ever since I first discovered your channel, I've been a massive fan. So thank you for everything that you do. Thank you for being the human being that you are, and for being an inspiration to people like myself, and for being a good role model for men and just human beings all across the world, man. As I said, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate you and everything that you do.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me. This has been terrific. I really appreciate it.